Marcus Reid's alarm went off at 4:47 a.m., 3 minutes before it was supposed to, because his phone was dying and the battery made everything glitch. He slapped it silent before the sound could wake up Amara in the next room, then lay there in the darkness for exactly 10 seconds, letting himself feel the exhaustion that lived in his bones now. 10 seconds. That's all he allowed himself anymore. Then he was up, feet hitting the cold floor of their 2-bedroom apartment. The same apartment he'd lived in since Amara was born 8 years ago. The same apartment where Simone had walked out when their daughter was 6 months old, leaving nothing but a note that said, "I can't do this," and a closet full of empty hangers. The bathroom mirror showed him what he already knew: dark circles under his brown eyes, his fade growing out because haircuts cost money he didn't have, the worry lines that seemed to have appeared overnight when he'd turned 32. He splashed water on his face and got to work. By 5:15, he had coffee brewing in the pot that only worked if you held the button down for exactly 4 seconds, and he was pulling out ingredients for breakfast. Amara liked her eggs scrambled with cheese, toast cut diagonally because triangles taste better than rectangles, and exactly half a glass of orange juice because a full glass was too much and 3/4 wasn't enough. He knew his daughter's patterns the way other men knew sports statistics. "Daddy?" Her voice came soft from the hallway, and Marcus turned to see her standing there in her purple pajamas with the unicorns on them, her natural hair in 4 braids he'd done last night, sleep still heavy in her eyes. "Morning, baby girl. You're up early." Amara padded across the linoleum in bare feet and climbed onto the kitchen chair, her chin resting on her folded arms as she watched him cook. "I had a dream about Mommy." Marcus's hand stilled for just a fraction of a second on the spatula, then kept moving. "Yeah? What about?" "She came back, but she didn't remember us. Like we were strangers." Amara's voice was matter-of-fact, the way 8-year-olds could be about things that would destroy adults. "Do you think she forgot what we look like?" The eggs suddenly blurred in front of him, and Marcus had to blink hard. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. Mrs. Chen says forgetting people is the saddest thing in the world." Amara picked at a loose thread on her pajama sleeve. "But I'm starting to forget what her voice sounded like, so maybe I'm sad too." Marcus slid the eggs onto her plate, added the triangle toast, poured exactly half a glass of juice, and sat down across from her. "Hey, look at me." Amara's brown eyes met his, so much like his own it sometimes hurt. "You're not sad for forgetting. You're 8 years old and you've got a whole life ahead of you full of people who are going to love you and stick around. Your mom leaving, that's on her, not on us. We're doing just fine, you and me. Right?" "Right." But her voice was small, and Marcus felt the familiar weight of being both father and mother, of trying to fill spaces he didn't know how to fill. They ate breakfast together while the radiator clanked and hissed in the corner, and Marcus mentally calculated bills in his head the way he did every morning. Rent was due in 6 days. $1,100. Electric, $87. Phone, $45. Groceries, maybe $120 if he was careful, and his warehouse paycheck would cover it, barely, with maybe $50 left over until the next one. $50, 2 weeks, one unexpected expense away from disaster. "Daddy, we're doing the winter showcase at school next month." Amara was drawing in the condensation on her juice glass. "We need costumes. Mrs. Chen said they're not expensive, but how much? $25. But it's okay if we can't. Jayla said her mom is making hers, so maybe we'll get it." Marcus heard his own voice, firm and sure, even though $25 might as well be $200 right now. "You're doing the showcase, and you're getting a real costume. I'll figure it out." If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Amara's whole face lit up, and that look, that pure joy, made every double shift worth it. "Really? Really? Now finish up so we can do your hair." Hair time was sacred. Marcus had learned everything from YouTube videos and patient correction from Mrs. Chen next door, and now he could cornrow, twist, and style with the best of them. This morning was simple. 2 puff balls with the purple ribbons Amara loved, edges laid smooth with the gel that smelled like coconut. "You're getting good at this, Daddy." Amara sat still, well-practiced, while he worked. "That's because I've got the best hair model in the city." He secured the second ribbon. "There. Beautiful as always. Like a princess, like a queen." At 6:45 they were out the door, Marcus in his warehouse uniform with his name stitched on the pocket, Amara in her school clothes with her backpack that had a broken zipper he'd fixed with a safety pin. They walked the 4 blocks to Ps 114 through streets just waking up, past the bodega where Mr. Martinez was opening up, past the church where Marcus used to take Amara before his Sunday shifts became mandatory. "I love you, baby girl." Marcus hugged her at the school gate, breathing in the coconut smell of her hair gel. "Be good for Mrs. Chen. I'll be home by 6:30. "I love you more." Amara squeezed him tight, then pulled back. "Daddy?" "Yeah? We're lucky, right? Even without Mommy?" Marcus's throat tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "We're the luckiest, sweetheart. Now go learn something." He watched her skip into the building, her backpack bouncing, her ribbons bright in the morning sun, and sent up the same prayer he sent up every day. Keep her safe. Keep her happy. Let me be enough. Then he was walking to the bus stop, pulling his jacket tighter against the November cold, already mentally preparing for another day of loading pallets and scanning boxes and moving. Always moving, because if he stopped, if he let himself think too long, he'd remember how tired he was. The warehouse job paid $16.50 an hour, no benefits, mandatory overtime when they needed it. He'd been there 3 years, ever since the construction company he'd worked for went under. Before that, he'd had dreams. Finish his associate's degree in engineering, maybe work his way up to project management, give Amara the kind of life where $25 for a costume wasn't a crisis. But dreams required time and money, and he had neither. His phone buzzed as he stepped onto the bus. A text from an unknown number. Final notice. Court appearance scheduled November 18th, 9 a.m. Family Court Division 3. Failure to appear will result in default judgment. Marcus's stomach dropped. He'd been dodging these notices for 2 weeks, telling himself it was a mistake, some clerical error, but he knew better. Simone's mother, Barbara Crawford, was making good on her threat. She wanted custody of Amara, claimed Marcus was an unfit father, that he couldn't provide properly, that a child needed a mother figure. The court date was in 9 days. He had no lawyer because lawyers cost money he didn't have. He had no evidence except his own exhaustion and love, and he had no idea if that would be enough. The bus lurched forward, and Marcus closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against the cold window. 9 days. He had 9 days to figure out how to prove he was enough, how to keep the only person in this world who mattered from being taken away. Keep her safe, he prayed again. Please, just keep her safe. The warehouse shift ended at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before midnight, and Marcus's back was screaming. He'd moved 247 boxes according to his scanner, each one lifted, carried, stacked, and his shoulders felt like someone had replaced the muscles with broken glass. The November rain had started around 9 and hadn't let up, turning the streets into black mirrors reflecting streetlights and neon signs. Marcus's car, a 2004 Honda Civic with 187,000 miles and a passenger door that only opened from the inside, coughed to life on the 3rd try. Just get me home, he thought. 4 miles, 12 minutes if the lights cooperated. Crescent Road was empty at this hour, just rain and darkness and the occasional passing headlight. Marcus had the heat cranking even though it barely worked, and the radio was playing something soft that he wasn't really hearing. His mind was on Amara, who'd be asleep at Mrs. Chen's apartment, and on the court date that was ticking closer like a countdown timer he couldn't stop. Then he saw the car, a black Mercedes sedan, sleek and expensive, pulled onto the shoulder with its hazard lights blinking weakly through the rain. And beside it, a woman, standing in the downpour, her silhouette outlined by her phone's screen as she held it up, trying to get signal or service or hope. Marcus's foot moved toward the brake automatically, then hesitated. "Keep driving," the voice in his head said, the voice that sounded like survival and self-preservation. "You're exhausted. You need to get home. She's got a Mercedes. She's got money, insurance, people who can help her. You've got a court date in 9 days and a daughter who needs you. Keep driving." But his mother's voice was louder, had always been louder, even though she'd been gone 6 years now. "Character is what you do when nobody's watching, baby. When it costs you something. That's when it matters." The woman shifted, and the streetlight caught her face for just a second. Brown skin glistening with rain, natural hair plastered to her head, her shoulders shaking either from cold or fear or frustration. She looked small despite her height, looked alone in a way that made something in Marcus's chest clench tight. His car was already slowing, already stopping. "I'm going to regret this," he thought, even as he pulled over behind her Mercedes, even as he put the car in park and reached for his door handle. The rain hit him like a physical thing the moment he stepped out, instantly soaking through his warehouse jacket and uniform shirt. Cold water ran down the back of his neck, and Marcus raised one hand high where she could see it, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Ma'am," he called out, staying several feet back, making sure both his hands were visible, making sure he wasn't a threat. "You okay? Car trouble?" The woman turned, and even through the curtain of rain, Marcus saw her body tense. Saw her assess him, his height, his build, the warehouse uniform, the old car behind him. Saw her make calculations about danger and desperation and whether to run. He knew that look, knew what it meant to be a black man approaching a woman alone at night, knew he had exactly 3 seconds to prove he wasn't a threat before she bolted or pepper-sprayed him or both. "I'm just offering help," Marcus said, keeping his voice gentle, non-threatening. "I work at the warehouse down on Fletcher. Just got off shift, saw your hazards." He gestured at his car. "I can call someone for you, or I know a little about cars if you want me to take a look, but I can also just leave if that's better." She studied him for what felt like an hour but was probably 10 seconds. Then something in her posture shifted, some decision made. "It just died." Her voice cut through the rain, clear and controlled, the kind of voice that was used to being heard. "Won't start. No warning, just nothing. Mind if I look?" Another pause. Then, "Please, I'd appreciate it." She popped the hood, and Marcus stepped forward, water streaming down his face. The engine was still warm when he leaned over it, and he pulled out his phone, using the flashlight to see. For a moment, the rain didn't matter. The exhaustion didn't matter. This was a problem he could maybe solve, a problem that didn't involve lawyers and court dates and impossible choices. His fingers traced along connections, checked the obvious things first: battery terminals, alternator belt, spark plug wires. The rain made everything harder, made his hands slip, but Marcus had kept enough dying cars running to know what to look for. "Your alternator belt's loose," he called over the sound of the rain. "Probably slipped off when you hit that pothole back there. You got any tools?" "No, I don't think so." Marcus jogged back to his Honda, water streaming down his face, and popped his trunk. The toolbox was held together with duct tape, and half the tools were borrowed permanently from various jobs, but it was enough. As he worked, tightening the belt and checking the tension, he found himself talking. Filling the silence the way he did when Amara couldn't sleep, when the quiet got too heavy. "This belt's pretty worn," he said, his fingers working despite the cold numbing them. "You should replace it soon. Any auto shop can do it. Shouldn't cost more than $50–60 with labor." He paused. "There's a place on Madison, Lopez Auto. Tell them Marcus sent you. They'll give you a fair price." He could feel her watching him. Even in the rain and darkness he registered details. The intelligence in her eyes when the streetlight caught them. The way she carried herself with quiet authority despite being stranded and soaked. The careful maintenance of her hair, even wet. The expensive watch on her wrist that probably cost more than 3 months of his rent. This was a woman who commanded rooms. He could tell. A woman who made decisions that mattered, who carried weight and responsibility like armor. And here he was, a warehouse worker in a soaked uniform, fixing her car at midnight on a Tuesday. The belt slipped back into place with a satisfying click, and Marcus straightened, wiping rain from his eyes with the back of his hand. "Try it now." She slid into the driver's seat, and the interior light illuminated her face for a moment. High cheekbones, full lips pressed together in concentration, skin that glowed even in artificial light. She turned the key. The engine roared to life. The relief on her face was immediate and genuine, transforming her features from controlled composure to real, human gratitude. Oh, thank God. She was already reaching for her purse, pulling out a wallet. "How much do I owe you? Seriously, name your price." Marcus shook his head, already backing toward his car. "Nothing, ma'am. Just glad I could help." "Wait." She stepped out of the car, rain immediately soaking her again. "At least tell me your name. I need to thank you properly." He turned back, rain streaming down his face, and for a moment their eyes met fully. He saw gratitude there, yes, but something else too. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Like she was seeing something in him that most people missed, looking past the warehouse uniform and old car to something underneath. "Marcus," he said, because he was too tired to be cautious, because the court date was 9 days away and nothing mattered anymore anyway. "Marcus Reid." "Thank you, Marcus Reid." Her voice was warm despite the cold, genuine in a way that made his chest tighten. "You might have saved my night." If only you knew, Marcus thought, climbing back into his Honda. If only you knew you were just helped by a man who's about to lose his daughter in 9 days. He pulled away, watching her hazard lights disappear in his rearview mirror, and realized something that made his stomach twist. He'd never asked her name. In 9 days, none of this would matter anyway. In 9 days, he'd be standing in front of a judge, begging to keep Amara, and this woman, this moment, would be forgotten. He was wrong about that. 9 days felt like 9 minutes. Marcus stood in the hallway of the family court building, his borrowed suit jacket too tight across the shoulders, his tie strangling him even though he'd loosened it twice already. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and anxiety and the accumulated fear of everyone who'd ever stood here fighting for something they couldn't afford to lose. Amara was with Mrs. Chen, didn't know where he was, thought he was working an early shift. He'd kissed her goodbye at 6:30 a.m., held her maybe 10 seconds too long, memorized the coconut smell of her hair gel and the way she felt in his arms, just in case. Just in case he never got to hold her again. "Mr. Reid?" The court-appointed attorney appeared at his elbow. Daniel Vega was in his 50s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed. He'd been assigned to Marcus's case 3 days ago, had spent exactly 45 minutes reviewing the facts, and had been apologetic but honest. "This doesn't look good." "Yeah." Marcus's voice came out rougher than he intended. "You ready?" "No. As I'll ever be." They walked into Family Court Division 3, and Marcus felt his heart trying to escape through his throat. The courtroom was smaller than he'd expected, more intimate, which somehow made it worse. Barbara Crawford sat on the other side with her attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in an expensive suit who looked like she ate people like Marcus for breakfast. Barbara wouldn't meet his eyes. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Alina Hayes." Marcus stood on legs that felt like water, his eyes fixed on the floor. He couldn't bring himself to look up, couldn't bear to see the face of the person who held his entire future, Amara's entire future, in their hands. But something made him glance up anyway. Maybe instinct, maybe fate, Maybe God's sense of humor. The judge entered, black robes flowing, her posture commanding and authoritative. Her locks were styled in an elegant updo, her dark brown skin radiant even under the harsh courtroom lights. She carried herself with the same quiet authority he'd seen. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Wait. No. His mind flashed back to Crescent Road, the rain, the broken-down Mercedes, the woman who'd stood in the downpour looking desperate and alone, the gratitude in her eyes when her car started, the warmth in her voice when she'd thanked him. Thank you, Marcus Reid. He knew that face, those eyes, that way of carrying herself like the world bent around her instead of the other way around. The woman he'd helped 9 days ago was now sitting behind that bench, holding a gavel that would determine whether he got to keep his daughter. His heart hammered so hard he thought everyone in the courtroom must hear it. Was he imagining this? The lighting was different now, harsh fluorescent instead of darkness and rain. She was in formal robes instead of soaked business clothes. Her locks were professionally styled instead of wet and plastered to her head. Maybe he was wrong. But those eyes, the shape of her face, the way she held herself. Marcus's hands gripped the edge of the table hard enough that his knuckles went pale. He wanted to say something, to ask, to confirm. But how could he? Excuse me, Your Honor, did I fix your car last week? Sure, that wouldn't sound insane at all. He glanced at Mr. Vega, but his attorney was focused on his notes, completely unaware of the storm raging inside Marcus's head. Judge Hayes, the bailiff had said, looked down at the case file, her expression neutral and professional. If she recognized him, she gave no sign of it. Not a flicker of acknowledgement, not a hint of familiarity. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe he was losing his mind, seeing hope where there was none because he was desperate and terrified and about to lose everything that mattered. The proceedings began. Barbara's attorney went first, her voice crisp and cutting. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Barbara Crawford, seeks emergency custody of her granddaughter, Amara Reid, age 8. The child's mother, Mrs. Crawford's daughter Simone, has been absent from the child's life for 7.5 years. The father, Mr. Marcus Reid, while well-meaning, is simply unable to provide adequate care. Marcus felt each word like a physical blow. Mr. Reid works excessive hours at a warehouse, often leaving the child with neighbors. The family lives in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a less-than-ideal neighborhood. Mr. Reid has no savings, no stability, and no ability to provide the advantages a child deserves. Mrs. Crawford, by contrast, has a stable home, financial security, and, most importantly, time to devote to raising Amara properly. Throughout the hearing, Marcus tried to focus, tried to listen to Mr. Vega's responses and the arguments being made, but his mind kept returning to that face behind the bench. It looked like her. It really looked like her. Then something happened that made his heart stop. Barbara's attorney was presenting financial documents. Marcus's pay stubs, his bank, statements, evidence of his poverty laid out like a crime. Judge Hayes leaned forward, her eyes sharp as she examined them. Ms. Patterson, Judge Hayes said, her voice carrying absolute authority. These documents. You're arguing that Mr. Reid's financial situation makes him unfit? Yes, Your Honor. The evidence clearly shows. The evidence shows that Mr. Reid works full-time, pays his bills, and provides for his daughter on a limited income. Judge Hayes's tone was neutral, but something in it made Marcus's breath catch. Poverty isn't neglect, counselor. Do you have evidence of actual harm to the child? Marcus's heart stuttered. It was her. It had to be her. But Judge Hayes never looked at him directly, never gave any sign that she knew who he was. Her face remained perfectly neutral, perfectly professional as she questioned both attorneys. Mr. Vega, she said, turning to Marcus's attorney, does your client have character references, teachers, neighbors, anyone who can speak to his parenting? Yes, Your Honor. We have statements from— I want them to testify. In person. Judge Hayes's voice was firm. This court will not make a decision about a child's welfare based on financial statements alone. We reconvene in 1 week. Both parties will present witnesses. Mr. Vega, make sure your client brings everyone who can speak to his character and his relationship with his daughter. The gavel came down with a sharp crack, and Marcus flinched. As the courtroom began to clear, Marcus remained seated, his mind reeling. Mr. Vega was talking beside him, explaining what had just happened, how unusual it was, how lucky they were to get more time. But Marcus barely heard him. His eyes were on Judge Hayes as she gathered her files and disappeared into her chambers. Was it her? Had the woman he'd helped in the rain just given him a fighting chance? Or was his desperate mind playing tricks on him, creating hope where there was none? Alina Hayes leaned against her chamber door, her hands trembling as she pressed them flat against the wood. Her heart was racing, her mind spinning with the magnitude of what had just happened. Marcus Reid, the man who'd stopped in the pouring rain to help her, the man who'd refused payment, the man who'd smiled wearily and told her his name before disappearing into the night, expecting nothing in return. She'd seen the recognition in his eyes when she'd entered the courtroom, watched him do a double take, watched confusion and hope and uncertainty flash across his handsome features. He suspected, but he wasn't sure, and she'd given him no confirmation, kept her face perfectly neutral, because to acknowledge it, to show any sign that she knew him, would be grounds for immediate recusal, and if she recused herself, this case would go to Judge Whitmore. Alina pressed her fingers to her temples, her breath coming short. Judge Whitmore had a 91% rate of granting custody to grandparents over single fathers. Judge Whitmore believed children needed mother figures. Judge Whitmore would look at Marcus Reid's bank statements and see a man who couldn't provide, never mind that he was working himself to death trying. She'd just bent every ethical rule in the book. She'd demanded witness testimony that wasn't standard in emergency custody hearings. She'd questioned the opposing counsel's assumptions about poverty equaling neglect. She'd fought for a defendant she had personal contact with. But what choice did she have? Let a good man lose his daughter because the system was too quick to judge, too ready to punish people for being poor. She'd seen the evidence. Seen Marcus's pay stubs, his perfect rent payment history, his daughter's school records showing excellent attendance and good grades. Seen the neighbor's written statement that said Marcus is the best father I've ever known. This wasn't a case of neglect. This was a grandmother who'd lost her daughter trying to replace her with her granddaughter. This was a woman with money using the system to take a child from a father whose only crime was being broke, and the only person who could stop it was someone who should have recused herself the moment she'd seen his name. Alina sank into her chair, her hands still shaking. Sometimes justice requires impossible choices, she thought. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking all the rules. She just hoped she was making the right one, because if anyone found out, if anyone discovered she'd presided over a case involving someone she had personal contact with, she'd lose everything. Her position, her reputation, everything she'd worked 15 years to build. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus Reid standing in the rain, his warehouse uniform soaked through, his hands cold and tired, fixing a stranger's car at midnight because it was the right thing to do. If he could do that, stop when he was exhausted and desperate and had every reason to keep driving, then she could do this. She could give him the fair hearing he deserved, even if it cost her everything. The week between hearings felt like living in suspended animation. Marcus worked his shifts, picked up Amara from school, helped with homework, read bedtime stories, all while carrying the weight of what might be their last days together. On Wednesday, Mrs. Chen knocked on his door with a casserole and fierce determination in her eyes. "I'm testifying," she announced. "That woman wants to take Amara. Over my dead body. I've watched you raise that girl for 8 years, Marcus Reid. You're the best father I've ever seen." By Friday, he had 5 people willing to testify: Mrs. Chen, Amara's teacher Ms. Rodriguez, his warehouse supervisor Don, the pastor from their old church, and Mr. Martinez from the bodega, who'd been extending Marcus credit for 3 years. "You're a good man," Mr. Martinez said, gripping Marcus's shoulder. "The court needs to see that." But Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Judge Hayes, about the way she'd questioned the financial documents, about whether it had really been her in the rain, or if his desperate mind had invented hope where there was none. Saturday morning, Marcus took Amara to the park like always. She was on the swings, her laughter bright and clear, when Marcus noticed someone sitting on a bench nearby. Judge Hayes. No robes, just jeans and a sweater, her locks loose around her shoulders, a coffee cup in her hands. Their eyes met, and Marcus felt his heart stop. She stood slowly, walked over, keeping her distance but clearly intentional. "Mr. Reid." Her voice was soft, careful. "Judge Hayes." He couldn't breathe properly. "I come here sometimes, to think." She glanced at Amara on the swings. "She's beautiful. She's everything." Marcus's voice cracked. "Please, I can't lose her." "Daddy," Amara called, "push me higher." Alina watched the little girl with something soft in her eyes. "I can't discuss the case with you. You know that." "I know." Marcus swallowed hard. "But I need to know. That night, on Crescent Road, was that—" "Yes." The word was barely a whisper. "It was me." The confirmation hit Marcus like a physical thing. "Why didn't you recuse yourself?" Alina's jaw tightened. "Because if I did, you'd lose. And that would be wrong." She looked at him directly then, and he saw the weight she was carrying. "I'm risking everything being here, talking to you. But I needed you to know. Bring everyone who loves you to that courtroom. Show me why you deserve her. Not for the law, for the truth." "Daddy, who's that?" Amara had stopped swinging, was walking over with curious eyes. Alina smiled at her, warm and genuine. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm Alina. I was just talking to your dad about the weather." Amara studied her with the brutal honesty of 8-year-olds. "You're pretty. Are you Daddy's friend?" "I hope so," Alina said softly, and then she was walking away, leaving Marcus standing there with his heart in his throat. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The courtroom was packed for the second hearing. Marcus had never seen so many people show up for him. Mrs. Chen in her best dress, Ms. Rodriguez with a folder full of Amara's artwork, Don in a suit that still smelled like warehouse dust, Pastor Williams with his worn Bible, Mr. Martinez with his account ledger showing 3 years of Marcus paying back every penny he'd borrowed. Barbara's attorney looked annoyed. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "This court wants to hear from people who know this child and her father," Judge Hayes said firmly. "Proceed, Mr. Vega." One by one, they testified. Mrs. Chen cried openly as she described watching Marcus do Amara's hair every morning, how he'd learned to cornrow from YouTube videos at 2 a.m. Ms. Rodriguez showed the court Amara's drawings, page after page of My Daddy portraits, all showing a man with a smile bigger than his face. "Amara Reid is thriving," Ms. Rodriguez said. "She's kind, confident, and secure. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because of exceptional parenting." Don testified about Marcus never missing a shift, about how he'd worked doubles when Amara needed new school supplies. "He's the most reliable man I've ever employed, and I've employed hundreds." Pastor Williams spoke about character, about a man who'd stopped coming to church not because he'd lost faith, but because Sunday shifts paid time and a half and his daughter needed shoes. Mr. Martinez brought his ledgers. 3 years, he's borrowed money 47 times, paid back every penny within 2 weeks. Every single time, That's integrity. Marcus watched Judge Hayes take notes, her face unreadable, professional. But once, just once, when Mrs. Chen described Marcus crying quietly in the hallway after Simone left, Alina's pen paused on the paper. Then it was Barbara's turn. Her attorney called her to the stand. "Mrs. Crawford, tell us about your granddaughter." Barbara's voice was steady but pained. "I lost my daughter 8 years ago when she walked out. Amara is all I have left of Simone. She deserves stability, security, a proper home. Marcus tries, but trying isn't enough. Children need more than love. They need opportunity." "And you can provide that?" "I have a 4-bedroom house, savings, time. I can send her to private school, get her tutors, give her everything Marcus can't." Judge Hayes leaned forward. "Mrs. Crawford, when was the last time you saw Amara?" Barbara hesitated. 3 months ago." "And before that?" 6 months. "So twice this year." Judge Hayes's voice was neutral. "How often did you call?" Marcus doesn't always answer." "Mr. Reid." Judge Hayes looked at Marcus. "How many times did Mrs. Crawford call this year?" Marcus's attorney handed over phone records. 11 times, Your Honor. Mr. Reid answered 9 calls. The other 2, he was at work and called back within 2 hours. Judge Hayes studied the records. "Mrs. Crawford, help me understand. You've seen your granddaughter twice and called 11 times in a year, but you believe you should have full custody." Barbara's composure cracked. "She's all I have left of my daughter." "She's not your daughter," Judge Hayes said quietly. "She's her own person, with her own father who's been there every single day of her life." The courtroom went silent. Judge Hayes closed the file. "I'm ready to rule." Marcus couldn't breathe. This was it. Everything came down to this moment. "I've reviewed all evidence and testimony. This court finds that Mrs. Crawford's petition for emergency custody is denied." Judge Hayes's voice rang with authority. "The evidence shows overwhelmingly that Amara Reid is thriving under her father's care. Mr. Reid has demonstrated exceptional parenting despite limited financial resources. Poverty is not neglect. Love, combined with consistent, devoted care, is exactly what children need." Marcus felt his knees go weak. Mrs. Chen grabbed his hand. "Furthermore," Judge Hayes continued, "I'm ordering family counseling for Mrs. Crawford and Mr. Reid to establish healthy visitation. Mrs. Crawford, you are Amara's grandmother. That relationship matters, but it doesn't replace her father." The gavel came down. "Custody remains with Marcus Reid. We're adjourned." Marcus couldn't move, couldn't process. He'd won. Amara was his. She was staying. Mr. Vega was shaking his hand. Mrs. Chen was crying. People were hugging him. But Marcus only had eyes for the bench where Judge Hayes was gathering her files. She looked up once, met his eyes, and smiled. Just slightly. Just enough. Then she was gone. 3 weeks later, Marcus was restocking shelves at the new job Don had helped him get. Warehouse supervisor, better pay, actual benefits, when someone approached. "Excuse me, do you work here?" He turned and there she was. Alina Hayes. No robes, no gavel. Just a woman in casual clothes with nervous energy. "You," Marcus breathed. "Me?" She smiled, uncertain. "I looked up where you worked. Is that creepy?" "That might be creepy." "The judge who saved my daughter tracked me down at work. Yeah, that's definitely creepy." But Marcus was smiling. "Why?" "Because the case is closed. The ethical issues are resolved. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night on Crescent Road." Alina took a breath. "You stopped in the rain for a stranger. You risked everything for your daughter. You're the kindest, most genuine man I've met in years. So I'm here, probably making a fool of myself, asking if maybe you'd like to get coffee sometime." Marcus felt something warm bloom in his chest. "You bent the rules for me. You could have lost everything." Some things are worth the risk. "Daddy," a voice called, and they both turned to see Amara running toward them, Mrs. Chen trailing behind apologetically. "Mrs. Chen said we could visit you at work and—" She stopped, staring at Alina. "You're the pretty lady from the park." Alina laughed. "Hi again, Amara." Amara looked between them with 8-year-old calculation. "Are you going to be Daddy's girlfriend? Because he needs one. Mrs. Chen says so." "Amara!" Marcus's face burned, but Alina knelt down to Amara's level. "Well, I'd like to be his friend first. Would that be okay with you?" Amara considered this seriously. "Can you do hair?" "I'm learning." "Can you make pancakes?" "They're my specialty." "Do you like books?" "I love them." Amara looked at Marcus. "I like her, Daddy. You should definitely have coffee with her." 6 months later, Marcus stood in Judge Hayes's, in Alina's, kitchen, watching her attempt to braid Amara's hair while his daughter gave increasingly elaborate instructions. "No, not that way. You gotta pull tighter. Daddy, she's not doing it right." "She's learning, baby. Girl, give her time." "I've presided over murder trials less stressful than this," Alina muttered, but she was smiling. They'd taken it slow. Coffee dates that turned into dinners. Dinners that turned into weekend outings with Amara. Amara testing Alina constantly. "Can you help with homework? Can you come to my school play? Do you know how to make Daddy's favorite food?" And Alina showing up every time. Learning, trying, loving them both with the same fierce determination she brought to everything. "There!" Alina secured the final braid. "How's that?" Amara ran to the mirror, examined her reflection critically, then turned with a huge smile. "Perfect! You're getting really good at this." Marcus pulled Alina close, kissed her temple. "Thank you. For the braids. For everything. For stopping that night. For risking your career. For showing up." Alina looked up at him, her eyes soft. "You stopped first. In the rain. When you had every reason not to." "Daddy, Miss Alina," Amara called from the living room. "Can we watch a movie? And can Miss Alina stay for dinner? And can she sleep over? And can she just live here because I like her?" They laughed, and Marcus felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like home. "What do you think?" he whispered to Alina. "Ready for this chaos?" She kissed him, soft and sure. "I've been ready since you fixed my car in the pouring rain." 1 year later, Marcus stood in a small garden, Amara beside him in a yellow dress holding flowers, watching Alina walk toward them in a simple white gown. Mrs. Chen was crying. Mr. Vega was officiating. Their whole community was there, everyone who'd testified, who'd shown up, who'd proven that family wasn't just blood. "You may kiss your bride," Marcus did, and Amara cheered, and someone in the back yelled, "That's how it's done." At the reception, Amara gave a speech she'd written herself. "My daddy stopped in the rain because he's nice. Miss Alina, Mommy Alina, used her judge powers to save us because she's awesome. And now we're a family, and I told you I liked her, Daddy." Later, dancing with his wife while Amara spun in circles nearby, Marcus whispered, "Thank you for that night, for the alternator belt." Alina laughed. "Thank you for stopping, for being the kind of man who stops. Sometimes the worst nights turn into the best stories. Sometimes a broken-down car is exactly what you need. And sometimes justice requires someone brave enough to risk everything for what's right. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.